story, we'll be exploring one of the most fascinating and dramatic figures from the Bible, Samson. Let's dive into his life and discover what his story teaches us today. Hi, welcome to Bible Insights. Our story begins in a time when Israel was ruled by the Philistines. Israel had fallen into their control, and life for the Israelites was hard. But into this dark period, God decided to send a deliverer. That deliverer would be born in a most unusual way. His mother was barren. For years, she had been unable to have children, but God had a plan. One day, an angel appeared to her. He told her that she would conceive a son, and that son would be special. He would be a Nazirite, set apart for God's purpose from birth. The angel gave her clear instructions. No wine or strong drink, and no razor should touch the boy's head. The Nazirite vow was a symbol of dedication to God, and it meant that Samson would grow up with a unique calling on his life. When Samson was born, his mother and father named him Samson, which means sunshine or little sun. From the very beginning, his life was meant to shine bright for God's glory. But Samson's story was destined to be filled with much more than just delight. The angel had foretold that he would begin to deliver Israel from the Philistines. But that was only the beginning. As Samson grew older, something remarkable became clear. He was incredibly strong, and not just stronger than average strong, but supernaturally powerful. The Bible tells us that the Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him, and with this divine empowerment, Samson performed feats that left everyone around him in awe. One of the first signs of his power came when he tore apart a lion with his bare hands. Imagine that, a young man tearing a lion apart as though it were just a piece of paper. Later, he even used the jawbone of a donkey to slay 1,000 Philistine soldiers. Think about that. One man against 1,000, and he came out victorious. Samson's strength was truly unmatched. But as we will soon see, it wasn't just his physical strength that made him famous. It was also his weaknesses that made his story so tragic. In Samson's life, one of the first major events was his desire to marry a Philistine woman from the town of Timnah. His parents, who knew the Philistines were Israel's enemies, were upset by this choice. They tried to convince Samson to choose a wife from among their own people, but Samson insisted. He said, "She is right in my eyes." This decision, it seems, wasn't just about love. It was also about his desire to be different, to be independent, and maybe even a bit rebellious. His choice, however, would set the stage for much of the turmoil that would follow in his life. When Samson and his parents traveled to Timnah to finalize the marriage, something extraordinary happened. On the way, Samson encountered the lion again, the same one he had previously torn apart. This time, when he passed by the carcass, he found a swarm of bees had made honey inside the lion's body. Samson took some of the honey and ate it, and then shared it with his parents, but he didn't tell them where it came from. Samson's encounter with a lion and the honey might seem like a small detail, but it would have a big impact later. In fact, it set the stage for one of the most famous moments of his life. At his wedding feast, Samson gave the guests a riddle to solve based on his experience with a lion. He said, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." He offered them a reward, 30 linen garments and 30 sets of clothes if they could solve it within 7 days. Now the guests, who were Philistine men, had no idea what Samson was talking about, so they turned to his wife for help. They threatened her, saying they would burn her and her family alive if she didn't find out the answer to the riddle. In desperation, she coached Samson into revealing the answer. He told her the secret, and she passed it on to the man. On the last day of the feast, they came to Samson with a correct answer. Samson, realizing that his wife had betrayed him, was furious. He struck down 30 Philistine men to pay off the debt he owed for the clothes he had promised. Samson then left in anger, returning to his parents' house, and his bride was given to another man. This event marked the beginning of a turbulent series of betrayals, revenge, and escalating violence. Samson's relationships with the Philistines would only become more complicated from here. After some time, Samson returned to his wife, only to find that she had been given to another man. In a fit of rage, he caught 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, and set them loose in the Philistines' grain fields, burning their crops to the ground. This act of vengeance angered the Philistines, and they responded by burning Samson's wife and father-in-law. The cycle of revenge continued. Samson attacked the Philistines in retaliation for their cruelty, and they in turn sought to destroy him. It became a vicious back and forth that only fueled the conflict between them. Samson, realizing that he couldn't defeat the Philistines alone, eventually took refuge in a cave in the rock of Etam. But the Philistines, determined to capture him, sent an army to surround the cave. Samson's own people, the Israelites, came to him and begged him to surrender. They were afraid that the Philistines would destroy them all. Samson agreed to let himself be bound and taken to the Philistines, but something miraculous happened when he was handed over. The Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he broke the ropes that bound him. He took the jawbone of the donkey and struck down 1,000 Philistine soldiers in one battle. It was a victory, but it was only temporary. Samson's true battle wasn't just with the Philistines. It was a battle within himself. His pride, his anger, and his inability to make wise decisions. And now, we come to the most famous part of Samson's story, the tale of his downfall with Delilah. Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah, who, like his first wife, was from the Philistines. The Philistine rulers came to Delilah and bribed her to find out the secret of Samson's strength. Delilah coaxed Samson into revealing the truth about his power. Despite his previous betrayals and the repeated warnings, Samson's trust in Delilah led him to tell her that his strength would leave him if his hair were cut. This was the final piece of the Nazirite vow. That night, as Samson slept, Delilah called for a man to shave off his hair. When Samson awoke, he discovered that his strength was gone. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him prisoner. Samson was taken to a Philistine temple where he was put on display as a symbol of Israel's defeat. But even in his captivity, something remarkable happened. His hair began to grow back, and with it, his strength. One day, the Philistines gathered in the temple to celebrate their victory, offering sacrifices to their god Dagon. Samson, who had been chained between two pillars, asked a servant to place his hands on the pillars so that he could feel the structure. In that moment, Samson prayed to God, "Sovereign Lord, remember me. Please, God, strengthen me just once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Samson pushed against the pillars with all his might, and the temple collapsed, killing not only the thousands of Philistines inside, but also Samson himself. In his final act, Samson killed more Philistines than he had during his entire life. And in doing so, he fulfilled the purpose God had given him, to begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. Thanks for joining us today as we explored the story of Samson. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible Bible stories. Until next time, remember that with God, nothing is impossible.